everybody. Welcome to another edition of ASOM Music After Hours, joined as always by Mark and Sean. So today's main episode, we talked about Halloween music, and I thought, we touched a little bit on soundtracks to horror movies and things like that. But I really wanted to delve a little deeper into that. I wanted to talk about what's your favorite scary movie soundtracks.
Well, I think this thing requires that we open some Walking Dead wine here.
Walking Dead wine.
Yeah,
Oh, look at that.
It's got a little hand.
It's got a little hand that's on the cork.
Comes out. And I think we should pour a little glass for everybody here. And
well, I mean, when it comes to soundtracks, we touched on a few of the big ones on the main broadcast. I mean, Jaws and Halloween and Psycho and things like that. But are there any that, I know that you're a big collector of horror films and horror soundtracks and things like that. What are some of the ones that stand out to you over the years?
Oh, man. It goes way back to my childhood, like we were just talking about in the episode. Cheers. Happy Halloween, Mark. Everybody. The ones that really stick out to me, and I'm gonna blatantly say the obvious, is the John Carpenter stuff.
Oh, genius!
Right,
absolute.
He's
genius.
God. So I'm not even going to talk about that. But the ones that really stand out.
Carpenter is such a good soundtrack guy that the guy isn't. He's known to the world as a director.
Right.
Yet this guy still tours. He goes and does concerts just playing his own soundtracks.
Right.
I've been there. It's awesome.
With his son.
His son, yeah.
Yeah, Cody, I think his name is. But I love the Phantasm soundtrack. Rosemary's Baby.
Oh, yes.
The Omen.
The Omen, sure.
You got to you got to talk about Halloween, of course, John Carpenter.
Well, Carpenter's got had that famous one.
Yeah.
Although I will have to say that none of the sequels that leap to mind ever did justice to that first one.
Well, Halloween 3 is pretty cool.
For the soundtrack?
Yeah, I like it was cool.
Okay, fair enough.
Fabio, I can't. Forgive me if I'm pronouncing his last name wrong, but Fabio Frenzi. He's the composer for all the Lucio Fulci movies, like Zombie 2.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And if you ever Google his resume, he's got quite the resume of horror movies, and it's really he does.
Are they good though?
They're really good. Yeah.
How about you, Mark? What sort of soundtracks leap to mind as your favorites in the horror genre?
Again, the cerebral stuff. Vertigo.
Oh, okay.
And the other one of the most cerebrally scary movies of all time, and probably as a result one of the scariest movies of all time, is The Shining.
Oh, yeah.
Brilliant film. Absolutely brilliant.
And
film.
the use, again, without the music, you don't get it. You don't get the feel. But with the music, it just rips it taps into that utter thing that we're most worried about in the world.
You know who else does that? Is Hellraiser soundtrack is the same thing. It taps into that, what he's talking about. But,
wow.
I mean, it's almost. I'm going to be the contrarian and say it doesn't need to be over the top obvious, and it's not a Halloween movie, Schindler's List.
Yeah.
But the way you can take those violins,
right,
and just kind of bring those people in, it doesn't need to be one thing. It can be anything that's able to connect you to that greatest fear.
Right. You know who's really good at that? You agree with me? Lynch.
Oh, yeah.
Like Twin Peaks and all. Like, if you think about his
Twin Peaks, the Angelino, what's his name? Badalamenti, I think is his last name. Angelo Badalamenti or something. The guy who did the soundtrack to Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
I mean, added so much to that. I mean, if didn't have that, it was such a quirky soundtrack too, because it's not really like anything else, but you have that echoey bass going dun dun.
Yeah,
dun,
right.
Dun, and all of the music was so melancholy and everything, but still.
It's kind of going back to what Mark said, right? It's kind of like that. Yeah, it's not. It doesn't have to be scary.
It's not scary at all, but used in the proper context, it triggers those mind worms that make it scary. I mean, there's some things that where the music can actually be the precursor to it too. You know, where because some of the scariest scenes I've seen is when the music plays and then suddenly the music stops and you see the characters, you know, rigid in horror about something, and then you see what they're seeing, and it's even more scary just because of the silence. But
True.
I've also seen it. I've also seen it used improperly. Eyes Wide Shut
okay,
was that Tom Cruise movie.
I remember.
And for whatever reason, the director decided that he was going to have the piano just the piano player just slam down on those keys.
Oh, Stanley Kubrick, right?
Kubrick, yeah.
And I found that to be completely distasteful. That it hurt the pain of what they were doing. That sharp piano thing, it didn't add fear. It actually undermined it. It became a distraction by itself.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do.
Yeah.
But I think that was intentional.
It was intentional, and I think it was.
And it failed.
It completely failed. And
Yeah.
there are things that happen in the movie business where I wonder why they didn't catch it
Well, I think in that particular case, you had a director behind it who had so much power that nobody could say no to him. So
It's kind of like telling George Lucas not to put Jar Jar in Phantom Menace. Right? I'm sorry to bring that up.
why did you have to bring that character up?
But it's the same thing, right? George, I don't think it's a good idea to bring Jar Jar in this movie. You know what I mean? It's like, you're fired.
Well, I mean, I think, and I actually think about what you just said, Mark. There's some of the most effective horror soundtracks that used music that was intentionally very light and breezy in order to almost lull you into a sense of the opposite of what's about to come, and then suddenly they slam you with something that scares the shit out of you, But
Texas Chainsaw Massacre soundtrack. You ever heard of that?
yeah, 20 minutes of screaming. I remember that.
No, not the.
That's right.
Not the dialogue. I'm talking about the soundtrack.
I know it was too.
Oh,
Okay.
But it's like the merry-go-round music going around.
Exactly.
And you know that somewhere at some point the serial killer is going to pop up.
Or
Right.
if you have one of those little, you just know, you're just waiting for it.
And now tell me this: when you were a kid, did you not want that thing to pop up, but you could not help but keep
Oh, yeah.
turning? You just
You wanted to. What the ideal world was if you got it one notch before it would pop up,
So you
right? So
could
the
time
next
it.
person who come would just hit it and boom.
But nope, it always gets you every time.
But I don't want to avoid this, Sean. You mentioned it earlier before we started. One of the coolest, Halloween-ish soundtracks in the world being Rocky Horror.
Oh yeah,
Oh, Rocky Horror.
that's
yes.
right. How fun was that?
It was, and it was a blast, right? The transvestites from Transylvania, transsexual from Transylvania, whatever.
Yep.
And it was completely off the wall, and it shouldn't have been such a great movie.
Right?
And
No.
Meatloaf bursting through the wall
Right.
and chopping him up for dinner, and
Did you guys ever go to any of the shows?
Oh yeah.
many
Yeah.
times.
And I've been through it all with the toast and the hot
people
dogs.
walking up the aisle and
All of
and
it. All of
dressing-
it.
Okay.
It's so much fun. It's so much. And they all dress up like the transvestites, right?
All right.
I never did that. No.
Well, it was weird. I'd wake up. My cousin would sneak in about 2:00 in the morning, and she's dumping her boot or whatever, and there's hot dog chunks coming out, and I'm like, I don't even want to know where you're going, or where you came from. Where are you going?
Wonderful.
Yeah, but
Is there any other ones you wanted to touch?
well, I think I touched everything here that I could think of.
Mark?
I'm as a fan of what music can do, being in the recording studios and things like that. I admire all of this and the John Carpenter stuff, what Hitchcock would do in integrating music, what the Twilight Zone episodes would do
Oh,
in
Twilight
terms of
Zone,
integrating music and creating the creepiest feeling.
Another theme song that is synonymous with scary stuff. I mean, when you hear do 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 do, I mean that's iconic,
Yes, it is. It's funny. It's one of our main shows to watch to fall asleep to, our Twilight Zone. So if you ever, how Netflix loops whatever episode's playing, so it always loops the scene with William Shatner and the plane.
Oh, 20,000 feet above ground or whatever.
That soundtrack for that theme is always embedded in my head now because it's always looping, before I go to bed. But awesome.
the other thing about is the absence of sound, and because we're so used to hearing stuff. Everywhere you go, you hear the air conditioner and the refrigerator. There's no place in the world that doesn't have sound. And the absence of it becomes the eeriest thing. And I still remember the way even the movie Gravity would use, when all of a sudden they hit the vacuum of space and you would hear the sound go,
right,
and nothing.
You're so right. I mean, I think about Paranormal Activity, that the first one of that series. I remember seeing it in the theater. And there are those scenes where you're basically seeing the camera footage as they slept, where the camera is filming them in their bed. And there's no soundtrack. There's just whatever ambient sound the microphone is picking up. And I swear to you, I was sitting at theater and everybody's straining against the silence to hear any clue of what's about to happen. And it's the scariest moment in that whole film. So,
what iconic films can you think of that had a lot of silence? I'm thinking of one right now that you should be thinking of.
2010.
All right, 2010, but Alien.
Alien.
Remember how that whole film was silent?
I remember 2010 when they were going from one ship to another, and there was about 10 minutes of that track where all you heard was the breathing. Of the guy going as he was going across. There was no dialogue, no nothing. Just
right. Even when what was the robot's name? David.
Hal.
Hal. I'm sorry.
You know how they named Hal, by the way?
No.
They took IBM and just backed up one letter on each one. So
okay.
I became H, B became A, and
yeah. Okay. But that same feeling of that breathing was when he was dying, and he was begging not to be, let go, and that
very powerful
that
movie.
silence.
Yeah.
Anyway, I would like to thank both Mark and Sean for joining me today on this after hours show.
Yep. Cheers, Halloween! Happy Halloween!
Yeah, happy Halloween to everybody. Be safe. We really appreciate your support through the Patreon platform. Really helps us out here. You can leave comments through the app, or you can email us at acetalksmusic@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Any feedback, any ideas of what you would like to see on the show. We're here for you. So anyway, until next time, have a good time.